We are here because we are dedicated to helping the entire CrossFit community. Determined to elevate coaches, box owners, athletes, and everything in between, we believe that this mission will begin right here, right now. While this time and this goal begins with you, our hope is that you take this fire ignited within you and weave it into your own life with the same unrelenting passion to give those you have the privilege of coming in contact with the best hour of their day.
Young Katie, I have a bone to pick with you.
Okay.
Yep. But before that, can we talk about that name has now stuck because now listeners now refer to Katie as Young Katie.
Yeah. She's Young Katie. But what does that echo? Who's got the echo?
It's probably you. We were just talking about your shitty audio.
Young Katie.
Is it me?
Now that's better.
Is it me?
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay.
Young Katie, you're hanging on by a thread. Let me tell you.
Every day.
I mean, we want to talk about this, quote unquote, Fern and friends, but you messed up. You wrote attack your day. It was supposed to be attack
your day, which would have made the landslide more egregious than it already was. So
I feel like
was there a person, Katie, that chose attack your day? Like one?
Yeah. So I apologize then. But I believe that attack your day with Ackerman and others sounds better than attack your day. But
the longest podcast title in the world. Attack your day with Ackerman and others and his friends and level 4 coach.
And level 4. So
some people thought we were serious, by the way. They're like, why are you going to change the name? I'm like, we're not changing the name.
We're not? I thought we were.
It's not going to be Fern and Friends. Although my wife Jess was just like, she's like, we are going to mail Jay a fern plant. And then we're just going to call it Between Two Ferns.
I put a fern plant in this office. Yeah.
I'm going to send you one, bro.
Well, now that I'm decorating, for those of you watching the video, check out this LJ.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Macho Man action figure. If you grew up in the 80s like I did, you had this. I found it on eBay. I got down a toy rabbit hole recently where I'm looking for wrestling figures. So if you listen and you have wrestling figures, shoot me a
You're
DM.
Also a loser.
Don't worry. Shoot me a DM to my private Instagram. And Fern won't see it.
Yeah, his other Instagram handle is old guys that like toys.
I might have to take that one. Hey, Kiki, what other names came about?
Well, first, there were 80 people total who took the poll. 61 voted for Fern and Friends and 19 for attack your day, but it was listed as attack your day. So
to be honest, surprised 19 people voted.
I am too, actually.
If you would have said 2, I would have been like, okay, that's what I would have expected.
That's decent. All right. So some additional write-ins were Behind the Fern. Best hour of distractions.
Oh, good one.
That was a good one. One of them was Katie and Kinsman. So me,
Ooh.
I get top billing.
There you go.
And then I've got to find one of them is PBS pledge drive to buy Katie legs. That was probably the best one.
we could start a GoFundMe page. One we have a I don't know how to, like, is it Katie, young Katie, you tell me this, like, women, is it inappropriate to call them girls?
I think it just depends on who you're talking to.
Okay. So we had a girl that joined, but she is a grown woman who has a job, right? But she works for GoFundMe, so I can talk to her about setting up a GoFundMe page for your legs, Katie.
Let's get till we see her and make sure she's not trying to pull a fast one and just raise money and split town. And maybe she has legs. Maybe she got legs.
You got me though. That's my game. It's what I do. I convince people. I sit here.
There's a chance. I'm gonna throw this out there. She has 3 legs, and the GoFundMe should be to have one removed.
Oh, there you go.
Time will tell. We'll see.
Girls, yeah, I don't think girls is negative because boys isn't negative, but it's like,
Well, I never assume anything anymore, so
so,
which is a good segue into today's show.
well, I do agree with you, but I say guys a lot, referring to both women and men, and I think that's inappropriate. Why is the echo back, Katie? What are you doing?
I'm not doing anything.
One person votes for a new podcast name with you, and all of a sudden, things just go south. This is what happens. You guys want Katie and the Kidsmen? Okay, enjoy listening to a podcast with an echo. Enjoy that.
It's only when you're talking.
It is only.
So.
But actually, I take it back. People want to hear me twice. Leave the echo.
Yeah, we doubt it.
The echo. So, yes, speaking of that segue, it's there, right?
It's only when you're talking, though. No, there it is. Yep.
I don't hear your echo. Oh, and now Katie muted, so we don't hear either.
Is it Katie? Is it Katie?
We want to hear you, Katie. We want to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, but I don't know what the.
It's all right.
I don't know.
It's gone.
Katie, we'll put you in contact with young Jamie, and then he can teach you some things.
It's still better than Fern's Wi-Fi. But anyway, you and I have been...
Speaking of Wi-Fi, has my wife ever just dropped off completely in the middle of the podcast? Or is that just you?
That was unusual.
Yeah.
That was... I blame Ross.
But timely.
Ross a lot upstairs. She's like constantly streaming. She's taking a nutrition course. So she's always watching videos. You and I have been referring to a book titled The Four Agreements by Don Miguel. What's his last name? Cortez? Did I just make that up?
I actually have no idea.
What is it, young Katie? Oh, you got to be faster than this. What do you?
We got to work on it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm so slow. Don Miguel Ruiz.
Okay.
So the Four Agreements, and it's perhaps one of the most referred to books on the show. And I think the reason is because those four agreements can not only apply to your everyday life, and it's something I work really hard at in general to improve, but also to coaching. And we've been referring to it quite a bit. So Fern, should we say the four rules, which we've said numerous times, and then go over each one as it relates to coaching, or would you like to approach this?
We could just list them first, right? So the first one is be impeccable with your word. Number two, I forget how number 2 and number 3 goes. Number 2, never assume, or is number 3 never assume?
I think it goes, don't take it personally as 2, never assume 3, but it doesn't really.
Okay, matter. So whatever. Yeah, so don't take it personally is either 2 or 3, and then never assume is number 3 at that point, and then always do your best is number 4. And they're so simple and so easy to apply on a daily basis if you're thinking about it. I just think since I've read that book, like the number of interactions on a given day that I will apply those to, is at minimum half a dozen.
Well, and I mean, the more you interact with other human beings, I think the more you need it. But it happened to be something you threw out there in a book I read years ago, and then I reread it probably 6 months ago. And it's just one of those things that when you have those 4 rules, those 4 agreements written down, and you realize every day you need to address them every day, just in life, but certainly when it comes to coaching. So let's dig into it. Be impeccable with your word from a coaching perspective. What does that mean to you, Fern?
So here's where I think that one is important, because I think the more serious topics people understand that, which is, if you say you're going to show up on time, and if you say that you're going to do this project or whatever, or you say you're not lying or something like that, that is accurate, right? So that is actually, those are not the ones that I think are the ones that are typically violated, I guess is the right term for that.
Broken.
I was having,
violated.
What's that?
Whether it's broken or violated.
Yeah, broken or violated. Like if people are just like, don't be a liar, right? Like I think that's a given. I think if you look at this at a little bit more granular level, this is where, and I've done this with myself, and then with people that I've worked with. I think the smaller ones that are seemingly benign are the ones that become problematic. So let's just say, let's give an example. So you're at a coach's meeting and you're like, hey, let's get I'm making this up, so this is not a real thing. Let's get that email sent out by tomorrow morning. And somebody's like, I'll take care of it. And then the morning comes around and it doesn't happen. And you're like, hey, we didn't get that email. You're like, yeah, I'm sending it out right now, but it's in the afternoon, and it goes out. And that would be an example of not intentionally, just kind of like ignorantly not being impeccable with your word, right? Meaning, say, if you say you're going to get it out in the morning, then get it out in the morning, right? Like, or if you say we're going to start and finish class on time, then start and finish class on time.
Yeah, I think, especially as the box owner, we fall into that trap of like wanting to appease not just your members, but your coaching staff or even your significant other, where you say things like, I'll get this done, I'll get that done, I'll do it here, I'll do it there, and you don't. And I think it's really important. One thing I learned is there's a whole lot less hardship and a whole lot less stress when you just either say, hey, I'm not doing that. It's not important to me. Like, that needs to be, I'll give you another great example. You know, we have a coaches meeting at the box I coach at, and they're like, okay, when can you know this and that? I'm like, you need to be honest sometimes, be like, hey, this is not important to me. So if you want me to be there, this is, you know, from the coach's perspective, this is what needs to happen. Oftentimes you wind up agreeing to do something, saying you're going to do it, and then maybe you do follow through, but you're resentful of it. Mm-hmm. So I think being impeccable with your word works both ways. It's not just to the people you're giving it to, but it has to be to yourself other. Like, you and I are big proponents of, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no. And, you know, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So being impeccable with your word applies to, you know, I guess, to both directions, inwardly and outwardly. So
I'll give you a perfect example. So I had to call a mentor of mine, or somebody that I look up to very much, because they had kind of handed me this project, if you will, a potential project. And I was like, yeah, I think I could do that. And it was involving somebody else. And they're like, hey, I can't do it. Could you help them out? And I was like, yeah, I think I could do that. And we had gone through it. And I was like, yeah, this is something I definitely think we can do. And then several other things that were more of a priority, that were directly related to like what I do here and the gym, just sped up really fast. So I had to call that person. I was like, hey, I'm calling to apologize because you gave me that and I dropped the ball on it. And I have to go to that person saying, hey, I'm an asshole. I overcommitted on that and I apologize. Like, I just fucked up. So I'm sorry. So I had to call that person and say, hey, number one, I did not mean to make you look bad. And I had to call the other person and say, hey, I fucked up here. I overcommitted. I'm sorry. I can't do that. And that's an example of where I was just like, and I kind of knew when I rogered up to it, I was like, yeah, that'll be a little bit of a stretch, but I could make it work. And I kind of knew that I was overcommitting at the time. And then I was correct. And so then I had to go back and readdress it, which is a topic in another book about never split the difference, and about like negotiating or like how to diffuse certain situations where somebody's gonna be angry at you, which is just lead with, I'm at fault. That's it, you know? So
I think, you know, I think being impeccable with your word is, I wouldn't say synonymous, but it has a lot of overlap with something that I've been wrestling with, and that is ego is the enemy. You know, a lot of times you wind up saying things or responding because you want to, right? So not just because you want to, because your ego gets in the way. And here's a great example with Roz. You know, she doesn't listen to the show, so I can say whatever I want. But I was like changing the baby or doing something, and she's constantly telling me what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. And she was like, you're grumpy. And my response would have been something like, yeah, no shit, I'm grumpy because you're constantly telling me what I'm doing right or wrong with this baby. But it just like, I heard her and just kept doing what I was doing, you know, and I think that's a tough thing for so many people. You know, there's so many concepts we can go into, but, you know, the idea that we have 2 ears, one mouth, all those, you know, I read a lot about Stoicism, constantly watching Stoicism on YouTube and finding things, and it's all about just like ego. And when we respond to people, especially members at the gym, we respond. I mean, I wrote about in the book when I yelled at my members because they were complaining about the workout. And it was like, that was all ego. Like nowadays, it's nothing like that for me. And I think just whenever you're responding to someone, whenever you feel that temperature and the stress start to rise in your body, just think to yourself, like, why am I going to say what I'm about to say? And what purpose and what good is it about to serve?
Yeah, I think it's just one of these things where I think it's okay to let people know that you're not sure if you're gonna. So you think about the number of things, or yeah, just the number of things that a member or a coaching staff would ask an affiliate owner on a given day. You know, hey, can we do this? What about that? Can you switch classes? Can you switch me on Friday? Can you take a look at the programming? Can you change that picture on social media? Because I don't like all those things. And I think it's okay to be like, hey, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that for you in a timely fashion, at which point it's not even important if we don't get to it right now. It's not necessarily super important anyway. It's important to you, but it doesn't mean it's important in the overall picture. And if we just get to tomorrow, then what's the point anyway? You know, because it's not pressing anymore. It's just like right now there's a pain point here that you're dealing with, and you, for whatever reason, want to make that pain point my pain point. Not maliciously or anything like that, but that's just kind of what it is. I'm handing this off to you. So I don't think it's the way to be impeccable with your word is, and I referenced it earlier, but like this is something that I'm still getting coached on, is like, don't overcommit. Because when you overcommit, you will inevitably violate your word. So as an affiliate owner and as a coach, don't overcommit. Don't say that you can write somebody a program if you're not going to have time to write them a program.
It's so easy to overcommit as an affiliate owner. I mean, as any human being for that matter. And that's something that I've gotten better at, just saying no and also prioritizing. You know, I think as an entrepreneur, it's very easy. You know this about me, Fern. Like I want to keep my toes in all different buckets because, you know, I think as an entrepreneur, you're always like, where's the next paycheck coming from? Like, okay, I own a box. I do this, I do that. And then when you and I launched Affiliate U, that was when I was just like, nothing else. I don't work anything else. I have a handful of nutrition clients still that I'm, you know, happy to work with, but I don't take on new ones. I don't, you know, do programming for anyone. I coach a little bit at the local box to keep my skills sharpened. But I think that's an important aspect, is you have to be willing to focus on, you know, if you're not focusing on this, you're getting distracted from the main thing. And like we've discussed, keep the main thing the main thing. Right. And then one thing you kind of said that I want to touch upon was the ability to say, I don't know. I think that's important. Too many people don't say, I don't know.
That was hammered into me at the Naval Academy, to be honest with you, because if you were to bullshit somebody, man, there was a shitstorm coming your way, because they already know as soon as you let something fly there. So one of, you know, I think we've talked about this before, like one of the responses that you're allowed to give as a plebe or a freshman is, there's like 5 responses, but is I don't know. You know, like that's one of, sir or ma'am, I don't know, sir or ma'am, right? Like that is one of the 5 acceptable responses for any given direction or question. And, you know, like that's probably one of the bigger things that ever took, is just like being okay with saying, I don't know, and I'll go find out.
Well, and if you think about it from a box owner or a coach perspective, the value of that is, I don't know, I'll go find out. When you come back with a response, A, you've been impeccable with your word because you actually followed through what you said. But B, that person that you're giving this answer to now is like, oh, wow, they thought about me after that.
This is a very, unless you were familiar with this kind of tactic or interaction, it would completely go under the radar for probably 99 of 100 people. So if we think about one of the most mundane, quick interactions in the affiliate, right? So let's just say you're coaching the air squat and I say, hey, Jay, widen up your feet a little bit. And then your response is, do you think that's going to help my squat? To which I would be inclined to just say, yes, of course it is, right? Because I'm the coach. At this point, because I know better, rarely say yes. My response is, I don't know. We're going to find out. Right. So, hey, is that going to help my squat? I don't know, but we're going to find out. So I need you to widen up your feet, and then we're going to go with the better, same, or worse. And this allows me to be impeccable with my word, because going back to what I've said before, my job as the coach is to be right. And being right doesn't necessarily mean that I need to have the answer immediately. It means that I need to be open about the interaction so that we can get to a better version of whatever this athlete is dealing with. So that would be like a very, very subtle, again, seemingly mundane interaction that would allow me to be impeccable with my word. Just say, hey, I actually don't know, but we're going to find out.
So if we were going to kind of throw like a subcategory to be impeccable with your word, let's throw a couple things out there. One, that's both externally and internally. Two, right. Being willing to say, I don't know. Would you add anything else to that?
Don't overcommit.
Don't overcommit. I like it. Right. Because if you overcommit, essentially, you're going to wind up not being impeccable with your word. So keep the main thing the main thing. All right. Moving on to number 2. Let's go with don't take things personally, because
I believe it's don't take things personally.
Yeah. And I think that is a tough one for a coach.
Let's go with the 2 probably most frequent ones that a coach or an affiliate will deal with that by and large, we will take them personally. Number 1, complaints about the programming. Number 2, so-and-so shows up late all the time.
And I would throw in another one that we've been kind of digging into lately. So-and-so doesn't listen to you about scaling.
Right. So those are the 3 that like you could probably deal with at least one of those on a daily basis as an affiliate owner and a coach.
Yeah. And I mean, you have a subcategory of just like random complaints.
Right. Again, like so-and-so's unhappy, or like it's just whatever. And this is kind of a Gary Vee thing, which is just taper your expectations, lower the expectations for the people. And it sounds pessimistic, but it's really not. Right? By lowering the expectation of what I expect of everybody really is acknowledging that most of our expectations of the people around us are egregiously out of whack, that we expect everybody to be super in tune with what we're doing, to be 100% punctual all the time, to be fully attentive to what's happening, and to always take our feelings into consideration, which is, when you say it out loud, it sounds insane. Like that's just not the real world. So just take a second to think, if that person shows up late, don't assume that they're showing up late because they're lazy and they don't give a shit about time. Maybe they have 4 kids. Maybe they have twins. Maybe their husband is on deployment. Maybe there was a traffic accident or a series of traffic accidents on the way to the gym, right? If it's the programming, never assume that they just want to poke you in the eye. Assume that they, or don't assume they might have some sort of lack of confidence with regard to doing certain things in the gym, and they want to have those things fixed. So,
one thing that I improved on over the years is that idea that you just said about being late. The biggest mistake, not biggest mistake, but a mistake box owners and coaches make is, okay, you're late, we're punishing you.
We've talked about this ad nauseum. Yeah. I mean,
right? The old burpee punishment, and no one likes being late. No one is showing up to class 5 minutes late.
My mom does. Yeah, my mom's been late for 67 years. Yeah.
But does she get stressed about it, or does she just show up late?
No, I don't think she's ever been stressed about it.
But most people, they're showing up late to class because of one of the examples you've given. Their child, their traffic, they get stuck at work, and it's like, okay, they realize at some point, oh, my boss just kept me for an extra 10 minutes. I'm going to be late. The alternative is waiting for an hour, and I can't do that because I have to get home for all these other obligations I have. So they're showing up stressed, and then you're saying, hey, not only are you stressed, now let's embarrass you, make you do burpees, etc. So those of you that listen to the show know that's not something we recommend. We highly encourage you not to do that. But now that I've got a kid, you realize how easy it is to be late.
Oh, yeah. Just getting out of the house is a 45-minute evolution. Long gone are the days of like, I'm going to go to the store, and you grab your keys and you just walk out. Have you seen that? There's an old stand-up comic he's talking about that, the difference between people with kids and no kids. He's like, if people with kids like look at people with no kids with disdain, they're like, let's go out tonight. Oh, you're just going to go out to dinner tonight, huh?
It's
must be nice. It must be nice.
So true.
So
I hear
it's
anyone tell me they don't have enough time or they're busy these days without kids. I'm like, it's like Billy Madison, where it's like, stay in the third grade. Like that's what you want to tell them. Like, don't have kids. I think
it's either that, or I'm just like, you lazy piece of shit, you know.
You have no idea. So don't take it personally when someone's late. That's a big. I think if you can just make that switch in your head and welcome someone in, like, hey, you're late. Come on in. We're really glad you made it. I don't even ask why you're late. It doesn't matter to me.
It's irrelevant.
You know, and then certainly there's a cutoff time in the workout where you're not going to be able to keep them safe, but rarely is it beyond 5 minutes. You know, you're typically still at the whiteboard. People are strolling in. It might force them to ask you an additional question because they missed something. Answer it. No big deal.
The other thing that is worth discussing here is that when you do take things personally, or when you allow things to become personal that quite frankly shouldn't be, there is a carryover effect to my interactions with other people, namely my coaching staff or the other people in the gym. So if I do take it personally, now I'm in a shitty mood, and now I'm going to not interact the way that I should, or have empathy, or be impeccable with my word, out of frustration, because emotion can make us irrational and really mess with decision making. So think about that. You're like, hey, I'm not going to take it personally, because that has a secondary or tertiary effect if I do take it personally, rather than just saying, hey, I don't know why they're late. It doesn't matter. They're here. It's good to see you, and then move on. Or, you know, somebody comes in and they're like, hey, everybody hates the program. We know it's not everybody, you know, and you're just like, okay, what, rather than take it personally, because we would be inclined to just fly off the handle, be like, well, they don't fucking know shit about programming. And they're like, they only come twice a week and they missed all the days they wanted to do that. Just be like, what are they unhappy about? What do they want? Right. And cut right to, and go directly into, you know, again, going back to never split the difference, which is like immediately, like, try to address what you think the fear are. Is like, do they not like the programming because they are afraid that they're not going to be able to do muscle ups by the open? Okay, well, let's address that. Maybe that's what they're afraid of. It's not the programming. It's that they have their own fear about not being successful when an event or something like that comes up, because they want to do better. So I can address that head on by not taking it personally, you know, which leads to the third one about never assume why somebody is doing that.
Yeah, there's a ton of overlap here between don't take it personally and never assume, right? And what I was going to add to don't take it personally, but can be applied to the don't assume, is the adage that we talk about at seminars is you never know what someone is going through.
Right.
You know, and
I got this from Jason Barnes, who's a member of mine who owns 2 Chick-fil-A's. And that's one of their mottos, is like, never assume what the person at the window or at the counter has going on in their life.
I've been on the phone recently where they can't hear the baby screaming because I'm constantly muting it. And, you know, I probably come off like abrupt or blunt with them, where I'm just trying to get off this phone because I got a baby screaming, right? So it's you can't assume that I'm in a bad mood, or that I don't want to talk to you, or that I'm not interested in what you're saying. It's just simply, hey, I got to deal with this thing. I got to deal with this baby monster.
The never assume could probably most aptly be applied to the so-and-so doesn't want to scale. That's an assumption that they don't want to scale. I mean, there's so many things between getting that information out and them wanting to scale that we leaped right over. Either I didn't give the whiteboard brief correctly. Like, we didn't do an appropriate warm up. We didn't do a test round. They don't understand what the stimulus of the workout is. They've never been taught that. You know, if you lay out all of those things and you're like, I mean, it's highly likely that at least one of those didn't happen, at which point would it even be reasonable to assume that they would scale?
Yeah, I mean, and flip it back on you, right? My buddy Chad, who introduced me to CrossFit, used to say to me, when you point your finger, you have 3 pointing right back at you. And oftentimes it's like, we're assuming by pointing at this person, they don't want to scale, when in reality, maybe you didn't do a good job briefing what that scale. Maybe they're like, okay, I am scaling. Or right. Maybe you said, okay, we're doing grace today. It's 30 reps. you need to be able to do at least 5 unbroken at 135 or 95. Cool, check. I can do that once, right? Not 6 more times or 5 more times. So did you do a good enough job explaining what you want them to do? Or, never assume, okay, my buddy's doing this, or my buddy, a lot of people are doing the same programming around the world, whether it's Handplan or NC or any of that. And I want to compete with my buddy. And I didn't make that clear that they also do this, but that's what makes it fun for me, so there's, yeah, I agree. Lately I've been digging into that idea of the stimulus and talking to people about it. And I think it's got to be looked at from the perspective of, you're the coach. Are you doing a good enough job with it?
I think if you rephrased it would lend itself to a little bit more empathy. So if you're thinking they don't want to scale, replace that statement with they don't understand, and then teach them. Very rarely. If you think about CrossFit as a whole, like very rarely are people resistant to learning new things. Like those are not the people that stick around in CrossFit. There's so many things to learn that you couldn't possibly immerse yourself into this thing that is CrossFit and be resistant to learning things. Like it would be very, very odd. And you would self-select out of the community is what I would tell you. So I would say that it's not that they don't want to, it's that they probably don't understand what is supposed to happen. So then whose fault is that? Well, then that's probably my fault. I should probably rethink how I brief, or rethink how I do the loading, or rethink how the test round is run, or any number of things. Because people ask me that, are people resistant to scaling in your gym? And the answer is no. Now, it doesn't mean they didn't used to be, but we understood that we were not doing things that would lend itself to people understanding what was supposed to happen. And it wasn't their fault they didn't want to scale. They didn't understand.
Well, and something you just said that's true is, just because they don't do it right the first time, a lot of coaches then go back, going back to agreements 1, 2, and 3, they take it personally, they assume they're assholes, and, going back to being impeccable with your word. Hey, I told you this is the stimulus, and that is being impeccable with your word, following up. They are most likely not doing it, but now you are not approaching them and saying, hey, I see you've got 135 on the bar. I think this is going to take you longer than 7, 8 minutes, whatever you've told them the stimulus is for Grace or Isabel or any given workout. I'd love to see you go 115 and challenge yourself, but
do the first 15 reps unbroken.
Yeah. And we all know if you could do that with 115, it's going to hurt way more
than
135 singles and dropping. Something that really helped me as well with the not assuming. So for those of you that follow Fern on social media, JFern3, a lot of political posts go down in those stories, and
which David Marmon posted in the comments about the sitting on the GHD. He was like, what am I going to post for my next political propaganda? And I was like, I got tons.
And for the listeners, so they understand. I don't disagree. I don't agree. I'm not educated enough in politics to care, to be intelligent in my responses, nor to care. But when all of the political stuff was going down with the election and Trump, people reach out to me, Fern, this, and they're like, how do you deal with Fern? Like, people reach out to me about that. And I was like, well, one, it doesn't impact me what he thinks about politics,
Fact.
So, but then this is really how I started to think about it. I'm like, let's just, using names. I don't want to say you're Trump, you're not, but let's just use names. It's easier. Fern's a diehard Trump supporter, which I don't know. I don't even know, to be honest, if that's true.
I'm going to get some serious hate mail at this point.
But I'm just throwing it out there to make this conversation make sense.
Right.
So-and-so, it doesn't matter. Colin Fern is a diehard Trump supporter. You're a diehard Biden at the time, this other person. And I said, what do you feel about this guy? Well, I feel this, and I feel this, and I feel strongly about this, and I feel that way, and this is why I support him, and I hope he gets elected. And then I said, cool. That's exactly how Fern feels about Trump. And it was like, they couldn't grasp that.
And some of these I know what you're talking about, or there were assumptions made about how I actually view things.
Yeah, well, that's
right.
True.
Like, it's social media, Twitter, all these things. It's quite possibly the worst medium for communicating any thought ever.
Well,
This is much better. Like very few people. I'll be very candid with you. Very few people that sit, however far across the spectrum from where I am. If we sit down and have an at-length conversation, do they feel the same afterwards? Because they've made a lot of assumptions about how I feel about certain things, and I know people don't believe me, but like I'm kind of in the middle. Like if you lined up all of the topics, like I'm pretty much dead center.
And that's where I can also speak from. I'm like, look, no different than what we post on the best hour or I post on my personal. It's like there's always hyperbolic statements because that's what social media is. I don't draw you in by saying, hey, I like these policies from Trump and I like these policies from Biden. And by the way, I also like these from the Green Party or whatever parties are out there. But my point was when I started to look at things as, wait, that person feels as strongly about their belief as I do about mine. And then I was like, that's interesting. And I think most people don't ever stop and look at it from that perspective.
Well, and so this is kind of how you loop this in, which is where the assumptions happen, or what I like to call the big leaps, which is I see how you feel about this one thing and then make assumptions about how many other things past that are either slightly related or not related at all, so you could do that about anything, right? Just be like, hey, and understanding like, hey, how somebody feels about one thing is not how they feel about everything. And the lack of nuance with regard to that, or the over assumption that like, well, listen, if you're for, I mean, you could pick any, pretty hyperbolic or polarized topic and just say, well, if that's how they feel about that, well, then I know exactly where they sit politically. And it's like, maybe not, probably not actually. Most people, what I find is are not anything that would resemble social media. Most people are pretty milquetoast. The average person is like, yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. And I kind of disagree with you on that. And I'm like, yeah, I feel the same way. Cool. Let's go about our day.
And I just think it comes down to, communication for a lot of this, right? It goes back to if we're going to tie this back into coaching, we're assuming this person's being a jerk for no reason, not looking at it like, hey, A, they don't want to be a jerk, and
right.
B, they don't know any better, or ultimately, C, they feel strongly about this. Like, I really believe I could do this at 135, right? As a coach, there's not a chance in hell you're going to be able to do that. But we've all seen it where it's like those members, they think that. And that's where at times you just have to let them crash and burn.
Maybe not crash and burn, but let them learn. And be there to be the safety net, which is like if the point they've decided like, oh, all right, I really kind of fucked this up. Be there to help them up and keep them moving instead of be like, I told you so. Like that would be incorrect, which is like, it's one of those things where like, I know this is going to happen. I'm not going to be like, I told you so. In round 3, they're going to start stripping the bar down, at which point I will just walk over there, help them strip the bar down and put the weights away, and then encourage them to keep moving. And then we'll talk about it afterwards. And I won't say, I told you so. What I'll probably say is, because I'm not going to assume that they knew that was going to happen. I'm going to be like, hey, that was a great decision. That was right. You should have stripped the bar. That was a fantastic decision. I'm glad you did that.
Well, and I posted something recently about tough conversations. It's necessary to have strong relationships. And I think that's what it comes down to, being able, because I have people at the box here that I coach, I'd be like, you fucked up, bro. Like that, right? Like you can have that conversation. Like I got one guy at the box, Tori, that I really, I wouldn't say it to his face, but I like him. We clicked on day 1, but we have that like ball busting relationship. And there was one workout, this is like months and months ago, where like he had 1 rep left and he just failed it. It was like a push press, I think. And I remind him, I'm like, remember that time you broke, like mentally? Because I beat him by like 3 seconds on the workout. But you have those relationships, and then you have the relationships with, a 60-year-old woman who you're like, hey, I'm glad you tried that. I'm glad you stripped it. Here's what I think you could have done. And then, making, and also giving them that opportunity to learn, like, hey, if you would have started with this weight, think about how fast you would have run, because you were already exhausted by the time we stripped to it.
Right. And Again, I think is a good segue, which is all of these things are wrapped up in the fourth one, which is do your best. And this is something I know for a fact. I talk to affiliate owners all the time. And coaches who are afraid to teach something because they're like, I don't know. I'm freaked out. I don't know. I'm not good enough yet, so I'm just not going to teach it. Or box owners who don't do a task because it's not going to be perfect. And it lacks the understanding of nobody expects you to be perfect. It's also not realistic that you get this right the first time. This very complex issue that has a lot of moving parts and is a very long-term plan. Just do your best. You know, I was talking to somebody, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, and it was just like, oh, I'm really having trouble like doing the attendance reports, and I haven't done it yet because I know there's people missing on it. And I said, listen, just do it and reach out to the ones that you got. It's like, this is very, analogous to the nutrition thing. It was like, well, if I can't do it 100% all the time, then I'm just not going to do it. It's just like, no. You're foregoing the fact that 80% is pretty damn good. And it's a starting point. Do your best. Box owners get crushed by this. And this is where they get stagnant because they are making, again, the big leap from where they are to the finished product, and fast forwarding through all of the learning process and the just doing a little bit better every single day to get to whatever that end state is that they've defined. And just being okay with just saying, do your best. Just try hard. Like, it doesn't matter. Just try hard and do your best.
And something we've discussed recently in that is finding the smallest possible thing you can do to move forward. Like you said, if I can't be 100% invested in my nutrition, I'm not going to do it at all. Well, can you just have a glass of water and a healthy breakfast? Even if the rest of your day is hot dogs and donuts, fine. You did a little bit better. You did your best in that moment. So it doesn't have to be, well, if I can't do this entire project, like, let's break it down into what's the smallest thing. And one thing that I've done with that is kind of, once I break that down, figuring out, okay, what do I need to accomplish today to move that forward to feel successful?
Yeah, I think go ahead.
Well, no, it's just often not nearly as daunting. Yeah, I can't run this report because these people and that, but run what you can and do what you can. And for a lot of these things, in addition to that, is just being present in whatever you're doing in that moment. For so many of us, it's like, I literally, as I was saying, I got a notification on my watch, and it's like, okay, I can check that, or I can be present in this. And part of doing your best is, I'm coaching for this hour, my phone's down, or I'm, spending time with the family, my phone, really for most of us, it's your phone is down or notifications are off, but being present in whatever it is you're doing in that moment.
And for box owners, whether it's like, hey, I end up doing nothing because I find figuring out what a good retention plan is going to be overwhelming. And I don't know anything about sales, and I hate it because it feels sticky, and I hate programming, and the schedule's a mess, and everybody at the gym is upset because it's dirty. And you could just keep stacking these things up. Just pick one and do your best. Just do your best. Make some sort of incremental 1% improvement every single day. You keep stacking 1% day over day, and you get to a pretty good product fairly quickly. So, whether it's that or coaching, be like, well, I just really struggle with the progressions. I'm like, do your best. Like, try it. Try that progression. Guess what? Again, the attention span of the general public today is about 4.5 milliseconds. No, everybody's going to forget. Just try your best. Try it out. If it doesn't work, refine it. You're one step closer to a finished product or a better product or a more polished product. Just do your best. And one thing that I which I think is just a stark contrast from social media and the internet, is that in the real world, in personal interactions, people are going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I think when somebody recognizes this in other people, all of these things, they give you the benefit of the doubt because they realize essentially you are just trying to do your best. And you could apply it to so many things, but even these days, if I ask somebody to do something like you, for example, I might be like, Fern, I've got this great idea on this great project. And you're like, no, I'm like, all right. Initially, your reaction is, you feel your temperature rise. Like I said, you're stressed. And I'm like, okay, let's think about it. Fern is, trying to be impeccable with his word in the sense that he knows if we commit to this, it's not going to happen. And then lastly, he's trying to do his best for many other things and is aware that if he adds one more thing to his plate, he's no longer not only going to do his best with this new project, but probably anything else going on in his life, be a husband, be a father, be a box owner, etc. Then you can always, the assumption part, don't assume, I have a project I really want to work on and you don't want to do it yet.
Well, that's where I was going to go is I was, because I know where you're at, but I also didn't say no. Right.
Right. And I can assume you're just saying no to be a jerk or you don't like it. It's like, no, if I actually stop, I can actually assume in a positive direction, which we don't do often. We're like, hey, Fern really likes this idea, but he wants to do it really well.
Right. And saying, not assuming that I don't want to do it, or just saying maybe he just doesn't want to do it right now. Or like maybe it's number 1 on my list. And if I can't assume that it's number 1 on his list because it's actually number 7 on his list. And I can't assume that you're just like, hey, we're going to jut this right to the front of the line and skip everything that we're currently working on. You say, cool, I get it. I'm on board. Can we just move that? Because we already have other, irons in the fire. So I'm on board. Let's do that. But like, just for the collective good of everybody involved, let's just table it for right now and revisit it and then do it really well at a time that works better so that we can provide a really good product or a really good value to people. And again, that goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's just like, it's okay to say no or not right now, or I don't know, and then table it. And then, there are times to just say no. Like if somebody's just like, hey, dude, like this is like telemarketers as a person, and you don't want to tell a telemarketer no. So you kind of like string it along and you're just like, the guy is trying to be nice to me. And when you should be, listen, dude, I'm not buying it. So I don't want to waste your time. Let's not waste my time. Just be like, oh no, I really think you're like, nope. Just telling you, bro, it's not going to happen. They're like, all right, thanks for your day. And I'm like, cool, thank you. And I didn't have to be a dick. I didn't have to assume this guy was sleazy. Right. And I was doing my best to try to be nice to them, even though this is the worst time you could possibly call me, because I got 5 people lined up outside the office. They're all mad about something, and it's just like, cool. I'm not going to let those people affect my interaction with this person on the phone, or let this person on the phone affect my interaction with the people waiting outside my office.
And just to tie it all together, I can't assume young Katie purposely sabotaged the title of the podcast, because I feel like, you and her are in cahoots. You're trying to phase me out.
But I could do my best to make sure that she does sabotage that in my direction.
There's layers to this. But ultimately it's up to me if I take it personally, which I did. Took it very personally.
I think you guys are assuming wildly that you're in control of the situation, when it's really me. It's Katie and Kinsman.
This is like Inception. How many dreams deep are we right now?
Yeah, we are like 8 layers deep, and really this is Katie's podcast.
Yeah.
Yep. All coming together. My plan is playing out.
Coming together.
Well,
go ahead. You can wrap it up.
Like the discussion on the 4 agreements, check it out. I'm sure Katie will drop the link somewhere, which we make $0 if you purchase this book, or if you find it on YouTube, or you Google something. But honestly, you don't have to read the book if you listen to this podcast. If you just listen to this podcast again, and you'll be fine. Do you agree?
Depends on what we're talking about.
Well, I'm just saying, I think we did a really good job covering it, especially as it relates to the idea of coaching. But really, coaching is just indicative and a small component of what you're doing in your everyday life. You're just, we had a dog trainer over, I think I've mentioned it. And I was like, you're just coaching. That's all you're doing. Like, it's the same exact thing we do, with fitness, with dogs, right, with kids, it's all the same thing. And if you can have these 4 agreements kind of at the front, you're going to be successful. Is that it?
Oh, fucked it up. Now I got to close it. All right.
Because I don't often close it. I like to let you close.
Right. I know. All right. I was trying to bring you in. I was trying to make you a part of the podcast, because you're just kind of like the sidekick, but we get
let me give it, Stephanie from Hawaii said, it's Fern ending it when Fern is ranting is all great, but listen, Steph, it's me. I hit the button. I hit the stop button.
I hit the button, right? So let me wrap this up for everybody. Here's actually where I think this is important. because we like to tout community, right? Like if you can interweave the 4 agreements into how you interact with your coaching staff, how you interact with your members, your coaches will start to do it. Your members will start to get in on that. And that, I promise you, will lend itself to the strong community that you want to have and that you like to brag on. So dive into that. It's like I said earlier, it is very easy and very practical to apply every single day, because you're just going to get presented with a ton of scenarios in which you can immediately identify, hey, I should practice one of these or multiple of these 4 agreements as we go through. So dive in, send Jay some love on Instagram because he feels bad about losing the poll. But at the end of the day, that was a shit name anyway.
Thanks everybody for listening to Jason Ackerman, Level 4 Coach. Peace.
So you never miss an episode of the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel and on all major podcasting platforms at Best Hour of Their Day. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of the best hour of our day. See you next time.